Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Juliet, and this is UX and Tame. And today's my closing event for the Pride Edition. If you've been following for the last four weeks, I've been having guest speakers from as diverse as I could find, and they've been talking about their stories in their own workspace, what inspired them. And for today, it's something that I have never talked about. And I feel like it's super interesting because I didn't know I'm part of this group. I didn't even know that the word existed. So today is how to find a workspace for neurodivergent folks. And I'm going to say right away, I'm going to say a lot of words, not the right way to say it, but that's my mix between English and Spanish. But before anything else, why don't we bring our guest speaker? Hey, Zoe, how are you? Nice to have you.
Nice to be here. I'm excited for this talk today.
Yeah, super exciting. And I feel for me it's been really interesting for everybody that I've been having doing the Pride Edition. All of you have like such a unique point of view and unique stories as all of us are. And when you were telling me about being not neurodivergent, um, I didn't know about this. So I was like, yes, let's bring it in because myself, I am neurodivergent. I have dyslexia.
Mhm.
See, this is a Spanish and English. Dyslexia. Is dyslexia Spanish or English? I don't know. I'm going just to say it. So I'm super interested. But before we jump into that, why don't we tell people a little more about you? Who is Zoe?
Sure. Well, my name is Zoe. I'm a full time UX UI designer. I'm based out of Boston, but I work remote. I've been in this industry for almost 2 years now. Prior to being a UX UI designer, I was working various jobs within the healthcare industry and attending grad school at the time, which was pretty unfulfilling and mentally draining. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But all of that essentially pushed me towards just greater reflection on what I wanted for my life and what I wanted to do career wise. And I couldn't be more grateful to be where I am now doing UX UI design work. So it was all a journey to get here.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's something that we're talking about today to inspire other people and to open up a little more about this topic. But before that,
Mhm.
again, I love this question, and I know that I say it every single time, but everybody surprises me usually every single time. But again, something fun or unique about you.
Sure. So, a unique fact about me is that I'm a digital artist. I have an art business called The Unbound Mind, and I sell like greeting cards, stickers, bookmarks, and other stationery things. I got into it in the beginning of like the height of the pandemic. So, in 2020, I started doing it. I haven't been as active this year, but it is something that I've ventured into. I've done like in person art markets and all that stuff, which is super fun. And then maybe I'll continue doing that in the future. But yeah, that's a fact about me.
Love it. Yes. And I mean, again, if you have the website, I don't think that you gave me this website, did you? I don't
Not
think
to
so.
this one because I'm not as active on it, so it's
Yeah.
like dead.
Okay. So maybe, this is what happened exactly with my podcast. It was that for a year, and then people was like, "Oh, I want to look at your podcast," and I'm like, "No, no, I haven't done anything." So maybe this is the time. It's like, let's put this link up, and then going to people going to see it. And it's like, I have to do this. People want their stickers.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned a little bit that you did something before UX design. What was that?
hmm So I've been everywhere. I've done so many different jobs from like customer service, but I'll talk a little bit more about my more recent roles. So while I was in undergrad, I was working as a behavior technician, and I did that for a couple of years. So I worked with children mostly who are on the autism spectrum. So they're neurodivergent, such a tricky word. Children that I've worked with, and then I've also worked as a researcher doing like clinical and community research, mostly within the mental health space. The last research role, which was the toxic and just horrible work situation that we're here to talk about as well, was as doing research for pulmonary diseases. So I've been all over the place with research. Um, Obviously not anything that I do now regarding like health and working within the healthcare industry, but I do research as a UX UI designer. So yeah.
A little bit of that. Perfect. But okay. I think when we were chatting and we were doing our intro call, and then I was asking about like, hey, what is a topic that you would like to share? You said, hey, why don't we talk about neurodivergence? And I was like, whoa, what is this? So for people who is listening to us and have never heard about this word, what does this mean?
Yeah. So I do want to preface my answer by saying that my experience and my definition of being neurodivergent is by no means a definitive answer. Neurodivergent is one of those terms where the definition varies depending on who you ask. Even if you're asking like research doctors, therapists, etc., they may all give you a different answer because they're all still trying to figure out what neurodivergence means and who or what conditions are included in this umbrella term. So, like you mentioned, your experience with dyslexia, that's one of the more commonly associated disorders that is under the neurodivergent term, along with autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and other processing disorders. So, how I came across this definition was understanding what neurotypical was. And with neurotypical, it's an individual who thinks, perceives, and behaves in ways that are considered the norm by the general population. And so I've read the definition, read like a couple articles about that. I'm like, well, no, that's not me. So neurodivergence is probably where I fit, you know? And I came across a definition that I think sat well with me from a Psych Central article. And it also kind of touches on the ambiguity of the term. So it says like neurodivergence is an umbrella term used to describe how a brain functions outside of the neurotypical mold. And so with that definition, like a lot of people can follow under this umbrella, but that's where I found myself within neurodivergence.
I love this. This is super interesting. And I was mentioning before we start today that I found this survey online, Google. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I didn't show her anything. So let's try, because we were trying me sharing the screen is the first time that I'm doing it. Let's see how this goes. Oh, can you? Okay, let's see. Perfect. So the survey is about like they survey or like ask 500 people, neurodivergent workers, about their experience in their workplace. The first question. So first, how many people in your organization do you think are neurodivergent? And they give us some people under that umbrella. So is 1 in 5, 1 in 10, or 1 in 15?
I'm going to say 1 in 10.
1 in 10. Let's choose 1 in 10.
Oh,
1 in 5 people are neurodivergent. So many people are surprised by this. I was surprised too. I think I ended up choosing 1 of 10. In fact, only 8.7 of surveys selected this answer. So yeah, we cannot believe it. With this in mind, how many organizations do you think offer support to neurodivergent employees?
I'm gonna say 50%.
Okay. Well, they're being tricky with us. Only 25 people of the survey say the organization doesn't offer any support for neurodivergent employees. Yes. So 57 believe could be doing more, definitely. Cool. Many organizations are for support. I feel like this is it for the questions, but I thought that it was really interesting because we didn't answer any of these questions right. Okay, let's stop sharing. Perfect. So when did you realize, so you were reading all these terminology, but why, when you were looking at this, what did you think that you were not neurodivergent?
I think I was just trying to, this goes back to like my relationship with my mental health disorders. I don't like calling them disorders or illnesses because that's not the relationship I want to build with the way that I experience the world. So I've been in therapy since I was 15 years old. I'm 27 now, and it's been a journey, right? Trying to figure out coping mechanisms, trying to understand my relationship with anxiety, depression, PTSD, panic, all those things, and how that impacts the way that I perceive the world and experience the world. So that's kind of where this curiosity came when these new terms come up and these articles come up or these Instagram posts about mental health and neurodivergencies come up. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like TikTok algorithm is super, we see all those memes about like people getting diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder on TikTok or anxiety and stuff. It's like there's so much information out there, and coming in with a critical eye, it's like, oh, this is like I relate to this post or this article. What does it mean for me? So with that curiosity, exploring these new terms like neurodivergent, reading more articles and feeling like a relationship was there with this term, because I don't experience the world in a quote unquote neurotypical way. I need accommodations, I need medication, I need support system and all this stuff for me to function in society in a neurotypical way. So that's how I came across this term. I'm still building a relationship with it as I am with my mental health and health in general. But yeah, I thought it was a newer term that I've come across and felt like there was a community there for me.
I love it. And I feel like you've been taking care of yourself and really, like you're saying, like thinking about all of this. And again, you've been asking for help. This is guiding you to a better space. But again, for me, like when you mentioned this and then I went and searched a little more, it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Again, me with my dyslexia, like I don't know. I feel like I remember this as a kid and having to go to spaces with someone helping me to, like find answers on how to do it better with whatever is happening in my mind. But I thought that I grew up, and then you just like, I don't know, it disappeared, yes. And then you start like asking questions and searching a little more. It's like, oh, okay, so this is what it is. So it's not that. Sometimes you put it too much pressure on you. It's like, how I cannot get this, how is that I forget to say things, or how I forget that I'm not communicating properly. And yes, I blame it a lot in my English, but then I realized that is something that is more than that, and that's really powerful. Yes, because then you can go and look for answers. But I love this. I feel like I was super excited about this talk because more about me than anyone. I feel like, okay, what I can learn about myself. But this comes like a big roadblock when you are in a workspace that doesn't care, that doesn't open spaces or safe spaces for people with neurodivergent issues. Can you say that? Different issues. But again, like I'm thinking back to me, is like I didn't know that people can help me to have a better workspace. I didn't know this. Yes. So tell me about your experience when you were having an unsafe space as a neurodivergent and what happened.
Yeah. So the first thing about this job that was a red flag was that it was fully in person. And now it's something you learn. Like a lot of people I feel like don't know that you can ask for workplace accommodations, or even like understanding your experience being a neurodivergent person. Like, what do you need in a space that supports you, that makes you the best employee, person, whatever that you can be? So the first thing was that this place was fully in person at a hospital during the pandemic. Like there's layers of stress and anxiety in this place from the get-go. And so I was working as a researcher. It was a small team of 3 other researchers, and then the doctor that we worked with who was conducting the study. And at first things were okay. Like you're onboarding, you're still learning. Like the red flags of the toxicity in the workplace weren't there yet until like a couple months into the job, when you start to get to know the workplace culture. And at the time when I was interviewing for this role, I was kind of in a place where I was like desperate to have a job. I was unemployed at the time, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, trying to get experience in the right places. And so, with that desperation, I wasn't really asking about workplace culture. I wasn't asking about management style. I wasn't asking about support for the team or anything like that outside of like career development, which is something that's important, but also going back to creating or entering spaces that are safe for you and supportive of you, regardless of your condition. So it was not a good start looking back. But some big red flags were like the micromanagement that took place, a lot of pointing fingers and blaming others, inappropriate comments about mental health from the doctor to me when I felt like it was a safe space to share, like, hey, this is an experience I'm going through. I need additional support. A lack of allyship within the workplace. So it was not a diverse team. And the nature of our research, our participants were a bunch of white men, and they would say, they were older white men, and they would say inappropriate things. And there was racism, experiences of racism that I experienced, and there was like no allyship within my colleagues. And it was just gross. It's gross to experience that, especially in a workplace when you know like there should be a no tolerance zone. So those are just a number of things that it was horrible.
And I mean, again, we are adding so many layers to this. Yes, it's not just you being neurodivergent and telling people like in a safe space, in a vulnerable space, like, hey, this is happening with me, and then taking advantage of this information that you gave, then to do the completely opposite.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get out of this, and when did you realize, this is enough is enough?
Yeah. I was so drained. Like, it was such a dark time looking back. I hated going to work. I was absolutely miserable and depressed. Like, my anxiety was at an all-time high. I didn't have any energy after work. Like, this experience completely drained me and like who I was and everything. And essentially, like, having a lot of conversations. Thankfully, I had a support network, being my partner and my therapist. Like, I would rant to my therapist, I would rant to my partner, and having a bunch of those conversations where I was seeing the toll that this job was having on me and my life. It was like making me question, is this job worth this experience? The answer is no. No job is worth sacrificing your safety and your mental health, your anything. The second question is like, do I deserve this treatment? No, I don't. I didn't do anything to deserve this like criticism, this lack of support and allyship. I'm just here to try and do a good job. And I can't because I don't feel supportive and I don't feel safe. The third question was like, can I support myself without this job? Obviously, it's stressful leaving any job when you don't have a backup plan, but I had to let it go regardless. I had to figure it out because I was compromising so much of myself and it wasn't worth it. I wasn't safe. I wasn't safe. And that's such a big experience that we shouldn't have to compromise in our life. And so after a lot of conversations, a lot of crying, a lot of stress with coming to the decision, like, how do I leave this job? When do I leave this job? I eventually pulled the plug. I wrote like a email directly to HR stating like I need to leave for medical reasons, because truly it was my mental health. I was pushing my boundaries so far and it was having such a heavy impact on me that I was like, I I might have to be hospitalized for this because it was terrible. And so I just sent an email straight to them, and it was a tricky situation to get out of. Eventually, I got out, and the rest is history. I never looked back, and neither should you with toxic environments.
And I feel like what happening many times is like you were saying, yes, at the beginning, they're boarding, everything is good, you need the job. And toxic relationship is not that just happened the first day and they just show it all like a bomb. Yes, it's little by little. And then I was like, oh, maybe this is just one off and maybe it will change. But then it keeps increasing. And at one point, it's hard. Yes. I feel like if no one has been in a toxic relationship, it's just so hard to explain how do you get to that point. Yes. It's like, I feel like being out is like, I don't understand how I put out so much time and so much of my life on this, thinking that it would change, that maybe it wasn't me, or maybe it was me, maybe it was all my issue and
Mhm.
not doing anything wrong. So uh, having, like you were saying, having that support system that kind of checks you out and said, that's okay, you're in a safe space, you can tell me how you feel. um, when did you start believing to yourself? Yes, because I feel like you say to yourself many times, like, this is not okay, but is, I feel like that's the hardest part.
Yeah. I was trying, like you said, I was trying to convince myself that I could either deal with it or that like it was just a fluke. And that was the hardest part of leaving the job, was finally getting to the point to actually do it and believe that no, this is not good for you, Zoe. Like, this is not how a job should be. This is not how a manager should behave. This is not how a team should behave towards you or towards one another. And um, I it wasn't until honestly I left and like started reflecting and looking back that I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe I was sitting there for that long. And even getting further and further away, even now, like seeing how happy I am in my work environment, seeing what the literally like the other side of the coin looks like, I'm like, wow, that was terrible. And no one should have to experience that kind of workplace ever. And poor management, poor leadership is unacceptable because there are good jobs, good environments, good companies out there.
Yes, and I feel like when I talk to people like in my different mentorships and they're sharing about their workspace, and it's like they think that this is normal. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, regardless of whatever industry that you are, this is always going to happen. But I feel like people take advantage of, yeah, the things that we need. Yeah, we need a job, and I feel like when you are kind of new in the industry, it's like, oh, I need to get experience and I need to do anything that I have to do to get this experience. So people take advantage of that, and yeah, and it's hard to speak up. I mean, anyway, but now we're moving to the green side.
Yeah.
Yes, where we feel happy and excited, and I feel like when I talk to a lot of people that are switching careers, this is a big one. Yes, one of the major reasons people what is changing careers. I mean, I think we talk about UX because both of us are in UX now,
Mhm.
but is finding a space where we still feel safe, but mostly where we feel empowered to be ourselves. Uh, doesn't matter what it is. Yes, I think for both of us is like being queer and neurodivergent and in different aspects. Um, how do you know, or how do you find a space where you can feel safe? Like, I think that's a big question that everybody has. It's like, how do we get to that space? I like everybody wanted, yeah.
Mhm. I think I feel like we hear this a lot within, especially when we're like switching careers and new to the industry. It's like things have changed with looking for jobs. It's no longer you being interviewed. You should be interviewing the company, the managers, the team as well. And getting down to the nitty gritty, like if you ask them specific questions, their answers are very telling. And if they're prepared to answer things like, asking about the management style, asking about the meeting culture. Like for me, I wouldn't be able to stand a job that had a ton of meetings. I have social anxiety, like it would impact my mental health. And so understanding those things and looking for those places that have just like kind of natural accommodations within their work culture already, or asking about the kind of accommodations they offer. And I do want to share a resource called Jan. I wish I had this resource earlier on because it's basically a whole website that has different types of workplace accommodations for everything for people with anxiety, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder. And that's like a good place to start. If you are in a toxic workplace and you need accommodation, go there, because accommodations are your right as an employee. Why not take advantage of that? But as far as looking for a company or organization that already has those really ethics and values in place, you can even ask, like during the interview process, I like to ask recruiters more of those specific questions, like do they have a like diversity board or employee group? Do they have an LGBTQ plus employee group or board? Like what does career development look like? How do you support like people who are expecting to become parents? Like things like that. Asking questions that are specific to your life, your experience, what you're hoping to achieve in the next 5 years, whether that's like building a family or like, you know, wanting to become a digital nomad and like work from anywhere. Ask those questions from the get-go, so you know you don't want to waste your time, you don't want to waste theirs, and at the end of the day you want to find a place that accommodates you and where you can be happy, because those places do exist.
I would say that this is so scary. And I think, again, I'm going to talk a little bit more from my Colombian culture. Like, this is not a thing. Yes. Maybe it is. I mean, I haven't been in Colombia and I haven't had a job in Colombia forever. But I feel like just make me think about my grandparent or my dad thinking like, you just go and just suck it up and you just get your money and you come back home and like nothing happened. And it's like, I don't know where we keep thinking that this is a norm, and we are not, like you were saying, out to really find a space that is going to really care about you. And asking them is like, oh, if I ask all these questions, then they say, oh, they want to have a family next year, so why do we hire them? Honestly, then you don't want to be in a company like this. I think that's
Exactly.
what happened. Yes. So that's why you're asking all the questions. Okay, before we haven't talked about UX. I just want to mix it about like, how did you end up being a UX designer? And after, I'm going to ask you, how do you find now the space that you as a UX designer feel fulfilled and feel joy to go to work? So how do you become a UX designer?
I was doom scrolling on TikTok after like a work day in my toxic work environment, just wasting my life on TikTok. And I came across the group called Avocademy, which was the design program that I completed my boot camp from. And at first I was like, this is a scam. They're trying to scam people and like take their money, and like, what kind of name is Avocademy? But I was curious because I'm like, what the heck is UX UI design? I'm like, I was always even before all this happened, I was always curious on how I could mesh like my creativity with like my background in psychology and research. And I didn't really have an answer. And so diving into what UX and UI is, I'm like, this could be it. So I started doing research on the program and other programs, trying to compare, because I always do your research. There's so much out there. And I decided to go with Avocademy, and that was like the end of it. I completed the program, did their little career development part of the program as well, and was able to successfully career switch, which is crazy. That was almost like 2 years ago now. But yeah, I love what I do. It's so interesting. It's ever evolving. It's always changing. There's always new things to learn, and that's like something that makes me happy as an employee. So yeah.
And again, what I like about all this discovery, and I feel like, even though it's like, how TikTok know all of this, yes, but
I know.
but what is interesting for me always is, it's not that this urge or this thinking about UX, it was new. I feel like you've been building this knowledge and this discovery in different ways, yes. And it's like, I think when it came, it was, you were ready to take it and say, yes, I can do this, and I feel like I can go and take that step. So I feel like it's so empowering how you've been building to get here for a while. You just didn't know, because like not all the pieces were together. And I think it happened the same to me. Yes, I got laid off second time. And I remember the first time that I got laid off is like, I'm done with, I knew that I was already done with retail and I wanted to do something different, but I ended up a job. And then the second time that I got laid off, I was like, this is it. I have to do it. It cannot be possible that I'm getting laid off again after me thinking if it happened again, I will do it. Yes, I mean, I wish for it. Yes, it's like, oh, I want to get laid off again, so I take the decision to do something different. But it's funny. But again, I feel like the first time that I was laid off, my I was not ready. My mindset was not there. I didn't believe that I could do it, that I could do the switch. So I feel like everything kind of comes together when you are ready to take it. So I feel like it's super interesting. Okay, now I know that you told us a little bit, kind of those green flags to go and find the job, but what other questions, or how can I find a company? Like, I feel like that's the hard part too. There are so many companies, and what happened too is that if you go to the website and you find like, oh yes, diversity, yeah, we do it and we have it. So how to make sure that I'm getting closer to where I want to be?
That's tough because I agree that people or companies make their like websites and social media, whatever, look all shiny. They want employees, obviously. And it's like I don't have a good answer because really you won't know if they actually live out their culture or their mission and values until you're in there. But again, you can try and dig as deep as you can and feel comfortable doing so while you're in the interview process. Even looking at like ratings on Indeed or like Google reviews, like see what people are saying about employees. Are they nice? Are they friendly? Are they welcoming? Because there's also people review. I've reviewed companies I've worked with that I've had bad experiences on, and you know, when looking for jobs, you can see like 3-star ratings. I'm like, why? And no, I don't want to work there. So it's also like you said, it's a weird thing to ask questions during the interview process because you are kind of coming from a place of desperation and like need for a job, or at least want for a desire to change wherever you are. And so it's weird to ask for questions. It's weird to feel comfortable doing so. I always write a script. So I have questions that I can just read. And it's something that's super valuable for you and hopefully will pay off. And that is a step that you can take to get to a place where you feel safe, supported, and like you can do your best work.
Something that I was thinking too is what happened too is I see these job posts and then I go and apply. But something that I've been suggesting to a lot of people is, what about if we do the opposite? What about if we look at companies, organizations? What about if we see someone in LinkedIn or whatever, and they're talking like really good about the organization and the company and how they have been treated? What about if we go on and talk to that organization and say, hey, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about your day-to-day, how you treat your employees, talk to employees. Go and read reviews. That's a good one. But I feel like if you start getting closer to a space without the job title on it, or without being a job on the horizon, is more about you trying to find an organization and a company that kind of fits it under your values. And what about if they have a job opening? And I feel like, honestly, this is how I ended up landing my job. And the one that I currently right now is like, I was checking all the boxes that I wanted to check. Yes, I feel like it's like I was comfortable in my previous job, but I knew that I wanted something bigger and a little more flexible and it's a little bit bigger for me to be in a space. I wanted to be myself. So I knew that whatever I was going to go, I needed to check more things on the list. Something I didn't do in the first one, because on the first one it was kind of my first job. So it's like whatever, even though it was a great space where I learned a lot, But then it's like, again, if you're switching careers and you know what you want, because you know that's where you're switching careers, that's where you're switching spaces, make sure that you're fulfilling that list. Sometimes you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to get the 10 things on the list. That's impossible at any space, at any job. But make sure that you feel comfortable and you feel like you are getting everything that you deserve. I feel like we're so afraid to take a space, and we're so afraid of asking for things.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was kid, you just quiet. You just don't ask for things. You just wait for things to happen. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, we're taught at a young age, and society like feeds that thing. Like the quiet person gets rewarded, and if you obey whatever corporate, whatever, you're gonna level up. But no, it's like it's enough of that. Like people have compromised their sanity for these things, for these like empty promises. And even though it's even though I was career switching and like I really wanted like getting the first job as a career switcher is challenging. It can take months. And there's like a lot of desperation coming from that space, but I was because of the past experience I had, and sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom and seeing like the ugliest side of things. I was prepared to say no to jobs and say no to recruiters, say no, I'm not interested because they said we'll treat you or we're all like a family. I'm like, that's a trigger word. You shouldn't be saying that anymore when you're like trying to get employees. So yeah, I think do as best as you can to feel empowered asking questions and going towards spaces where you are not going to be neglected as an employee.
Mm-hmm. I want to know, how did you ended up landing your first job? Like, how did you get there? I know this is not the topic today, but um, we are all career switchers. We all want to land that first job. So, how did you do yours?
I got my job on LinkedIn. It was a quick process for me. I will say that. It only took me 2 weeks to find my first job. So it was like I was hustling though. I was hustling. I applied to within those 2 weeks. I applied to over 200 jobs with like custom resumes and everything. Like I was applying to jobs like it was my full time job, and it paid off thankfully. And I was in a place where I'm like I need to get a job quick because I've during that gap of like quitting the job and completing the boot camp, I wasn't working. I was just doing the boot camp, like investing all my time and energy and draining my savings account. So I was like, I need a job. And thankfully, I got one fairly quickly. I got a ton of rejections. It's natural. It still impacts you the same. Like, doesn't feel good getting rejected, but um, the right job will come. If you put that energy forward and you put that work forward and you know what you're looking for, you will land that place or at least close to that place that you want.
I love it. Yeah, because again, I feel like when you said, "Oh, it took me 2 weeks to land at a job," it's not that you just did the work in the 2 weeks. And I think for this is for people to understand, this is not just a 2 week work. Like before that, it's been happening a lot. Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
even during school, a lot of people, I feel like people who has been successful is like they try everything and they do different things, and they just don't do like, oh, I just applied to LinkedIn. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you have done so many things. And again, I don't want to tell my story about how I landed this job, because I'm going to be doing, if you want, like a workshop in July. It's July 15, somewhere around there about this. But because sometimes people tell stories about how they funded the job, and it sounds like a miracle. It's like, not a miracle. Nothing of this is miracle.
No.
This is hard work and a lot of, I think this is the iceberg analogy, that you just see the
Mm.
little piece on top, but there is so much that happened before that. A lot of rejections. I mean, if you got a job, that means if you applied to 200 and something jobs, you got a lot of rejections.
Majority were not hearing back at all. And then the second majority was rejections. I only got like a handful, like maybe less than 10 interviews. Okay. And then like only two of those were like second, third interviews. And then one of them was a job offer. Like that is the metric that will stay true regardless of how long you apply for jobs. It's competitive, it's challenging. People, like, everybody has a portfolio, everybody, nowadays can do UX UI design. So yeah, it can be a very long journey, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of patience, and a lot of dedication.
I mean, 10 interviews, I'm thinking in like your 2-week period. This is intense. It's
It
like,
was.
this is
It was
intense.
exhausting.
That takes so much out of you. But you know what? Again, it's like that first interview, second, third, again, until the 9, it got you so much prepared. I mean, this is me just thinking about it. So much practice of you, like really getting so good at answering questions, getting so good at storytelling, that it was just, again, all of this rejection getting you to the place that you needed to be.
Yeah. I look back at my journey and I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I am so happy with my job now, and it all paid off, even being in that toxic work environment and like realizing what that does to people and employees. I'm like, no, I have a zero like BS tolerance now, and forever moving forward. Like, I will not put up with that ever again. And I will try and advocate for other people who, like my sisters, and experiencing the same thing. And I'm telling her, like, listen, this is what you can do to prepare to transition out of your job, or like figure out how to make this space safe for you via accommodation. So there's always something to learn, always information to share with others. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast as well, because it's a common experience. Like, we saw the statistic, 1 in 5 neurodivergent employees, just from that survey. Like, there's probably so many more. And who knows how many of those are supported in the workspace? Who knows how many of those have accommodations? Who knows how many of those are experiencing discrimination and all that stuff? Like, yeah, it's a large population, a large community, and we all need to help each other where we can.
What makes a safe space? And I feel like, again, I know that we ask a lot of questions, and I think maybe the question is what it makes a safe space for you. We're going to need different things. But yes, what is safe for you?
Yeah, like you said, unique to everybody. I personally need to work from home. I have my dogs here. I have my comfort here. I have noise canceling, like all those things that can impact me and like create anxiety, create panic. I can control in this environment. And even dealing with like meetings and social anxiety, I feel safer at home. So that's like the biggest one. And thank goodness for remote work and like that becoming a norm, because it's amazing. It's super beneficial. But also having like a good manager has a huge impact. I feel so supportive, so like trusted, and like there's a lot of security in me being the expert and the professional, and the person to come for UX UI design work. I'm the only designer on my team, so having that trust and feeling valued and acknowledged and have my ideas heard and all that stuff, extremely valuable. I have like, with that trust, I feel like I'm becoming a better designer, and like having the autonomy to make own decisions and like investigate things and all that stuff. Like, having good leadership has been crucial to my happiness. And then the work company culture. I work for a company where they're very relationship and people first, like from the customers to the employees. And I didn't know, like, this is one of the things that's hard to tell while you're interviewing, but like immediately when I was doing like onboarding and orientation, I was like, oh my God, everybody's super nice. Like, this feels weird. Are they like staging something? But no, it's literally through and through everybody, from like I work for a bank, so like the bank tellers to the CEO. Like, we even get like personal FaceTime with him when we're onboarding. Like, it's crazy. It was a shock for me coming from where I came from, but all those things were green flags for me. I felt immediately welcomed, immediately like encouraged and excited to do work, because obviously if you're miserable in a workplace, like, I don't want to do work for them. So that's what makes this place like just awesome for me.
Love it. And I think I asked this question because a lot of people is like, oh, what is feeling safe? And again, for all of us, it's different. But I want people to know that places like this exist. This is not
Hmm.
like something that you just dream and will never get there. And for me, it's the same. I think one of my big checklist on my list, the biggest one is like I want to work from like anywhere in the world, and it's something that I'm doing right now. I know like I used to work remote always, but I couldn't just work whenever I wanted. So this is
Mm.
my real remote. I wanted to have a space where I feel empowered by my leader to take decisions and kind of run uh, the show from my side as a UX designer, and it's something that I have and I really appreciate having a team that is diverse and that I'm able to honestly to have fun is such a big thing for me that I can just and have a conversation about your day, like what did you do in the weekend, and sometimes you think, oh, that should be like normal, but it's not. Sometimes these conversations and spaces are not there for people to take. And I mean, honestly, today is the first day. It's called Friday Summer Fridays. So from today until September, we just work half day on Fridays for everybody in the company.
That's
So that's
amazing.
such a powerful thing. Yes, it's like they
Hmm.
understand that we all want to enjoy the summer, the long sunny days.
Exactly.
So it's these little things that look little, but they're so powerful. And thinking about like we want people to be happy and people to be able to come
Hmm.
to work and feel like they're doing their best. So yeah, I love it. So you can find
Hmm.
that place. But something that I was thinking too is not everybody has the chance on they're not in the space right now to find that, and it's hard, yes, but I feel like make sure that you have someone around you that supports you and kind of gets you where you need to get. Just keep your eyes open to find a space like this. You're going to find that you just need to like speak up to yourself and it's like let's
Hmm.
try to do it, let's try to come out of this. So I understand this is not like a let me just drop everything and find another job. This is hard, but at the same time, is like keep working on the side to find this, and it's possible. Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. What is next for you? What is
I
Zoe
don't
doing?
know.
What is your
I am chilling right now, but I'm actually moving to Colorado. So I'm based in Boston, but I'm going to be heading out to the mountains. So hopefully, hikes and just connecting with nature is in the foreseeable future for me, and I'm so excited for that. I'm hoping to start also doing maybe like a little bit of UX UI design freelance. I have like a trying to build a website, which is so funny when you would think like we do that every day, but when it comes to like our personal work, we're like takes forever to do. But I'm hoping to start doing that just to have like supplemental income, give myself a little bit of freedom too with working. But yeah, mostly excited for the nature in Colorado. Super excited.
love it? I mean, I'm in Vancouver, and you will say, "Oh, how much hikes do you do?" I don't do hikes. I do city hikes, but the nature is beautiful here. But yeah, I'm so excited for whatever is coming to you. Thank you so much again for sharing your story and being vulnerable with us and just really opening up. I think is such a pleasure to be able to have that. Again, we don't know who is listening to us, and I feel like it's going to be powerful for someone. So that's thank you so much.
I hope so. Thanks for hosting this space. Yeah, this was really awesome.
Yes, and for all of you that are celebrating Pride and you're part of the community, thank you for being here. Thank you for existing. We love you. We see you, and whatever or any way that you celebrate Pride, that's for you to choose. So thank you so much. And again, I was telling you at the beginning, July is going to be all about how to find your first job. Is going to be mostly about in Canada because that's the biggest network that I have, but whoever designer is over there that is like, how do I land my first job? Tune in for July. Tons of guest speaker, and we're going to have either like a recruiter that is going to give us a little some tips, for you to use. So, anyways, thank you everybody. Thank you for being here. Happy Pride. Bye.